May 28, 1940, Berlin. Inside the Reich Air Ministry, Reichsmarshal Hermann Göring tossed a folder across his desk with disgust. The document detailed an American proposal that seemed absurd to every officer in the room: President Franklin Roosevelt asking Congress for industrial capacity to build 50,000 warplanes a year. Göring snorted. They know nothing of war production. Let them try to turn their automobile plants into airplane factories. They'll learn this isn't assembly line work. Laughter followed. But in Detroit, a Danish-American immigrant named William Knudsen was already proving him wrong. The former head of General Motors, now serving Roosevelt for a token $1 a year, had begun orchestrating the largest industrial transformation in history, the conversion of a consumer economy into the arsenal of democracy. Within 4 years, the United States wouldn't just reach Roosevelt's impossible target. It would double it, producing nearly 100,000 aircraft annually while simultaneously fighting 2 wars on opposite sides of the planet. Roosevelt's proclamation came on May 16, 1940, as German panzers split France in half. Standing before Congress, he declared, "I should like to see this nation geared up to produce at least 50,000 planes a year." Even allies called it fantasy. In 1939, American factories had built just 3,611 military planes. The entire Army Air Corps possessed 1,700 combat-ready aircraft, many bordering on obsolete. A 14-fold expansion sounded like political theater, not policy. When presidential advisor Bernard Baruch was asked who could make it happen, he reportedly answered, "First, Bill Knudsen. Second, Bill Knudsen. Third, Bill Knudsen." Knudsen abandoned his $300,000 a year salary, trading corporate luxury for a single desk in Washington and a mission to turn carmakers into the world's air arsenal. The transformation started instantly. By December 1941, as America entered the war, factories were already turning out 2,000 military planes a month, 20 times the volume of 2 years earlier. The Ford Motor Company broke ground on a bomber plant in Willow Run, Michigan. Boeing expanded Seattle's production hangars. Douglas Aircraft tripled its workforce. Subcontractors sprouted overnight across the Midwest. Germany's intelligence analysts saw none of it clearly, blinded by ideology. The Wehrmacht's former attaché in Washington, General Friedrich von Boeticher, had filed accurate reports warning Berlin of America's potential. In late 1940, he cabled that U.S. war production will reach unimaginable heights. His message was mocked as defeatism. When Boeticher met Hitler in 1939 to discuss American strength, the Führer ignored the numbers and launched into a tirade about racial degeneracy. "They are half Judaized, half negrified," he ranted, "and incapable of sustained warfare." This contempt became policy. The Luftwaffe dismissed reports of women entering aircraft plants as proof of American desperation. They couldn't conceive that a democracy could outproduce a dictatorship simply through coordination and private enterprise. On farmland outside Ypsilanti, Michigan, Ford engineers broke ground April 18, 1941 on what would become the world's largest enclosed factory, 3.5 million square feet, a mile-long assembly line capable of producing the B-24 Liberator. Ford's production chief, Charles Sorensen, promised to build 1 bomber per hour when other plants required a day per plane. The first results were disastrous. The initial bomber, completed in September 1942, had to be entirely rebuilt. Half of Willow Run's output failed quality inspection. "Will it run?" critics joked. But Sorensen's engineers refused failure. They dissected the B-24's 488,000 parts into modular subassemblies, invented hydraulic riveters, designed pre-wired control harnesses, and migrated the car industry's moving assembly lines into aviation. They absorbed 578 design changes in 1943 alone without stopping production. By September that year, monthly output hit 148 bombers. December, 365. In April 1944, the plant rolled out 428 Liberators, one every 63 minutes, 24 hours a day. That single factory outbuilt the entire German aircraft industry. The shock reached German pilots first. Over Tunisia in late 1942, Ace Major Johannes Steinhoff of JG-77 noted, "The American pilots are no longer amateurs. Worse, there are more of them every day. By January 27, 1943, U.S. bombers were striking Germany itself, Wilhelmshaven the first target. By October's Black Thursday at Schweinfurt, the 8th Air Force could lose 60 B-17s in a single battle and replace them within 2 weeks. In February 1944's Big Week, more than 3,500 bomber sorties smashed German aircraft plants. The Luftwaffe lost over 300 fighters and hundreds of veteran pilots. General Adolf Galland reported bitterly that Germany was losing 1,200 fighters monthly but building only 1,000, while America produced 2,500 fighters per month and lost just 400. Major Heinz Barr, credited with 220 kills, described one mission above Brunswick. The bomber stream stretched from horizon to horizon, 700 flying fortresses and liberators. 8 of us against an endless sky. It was hopeless. By 1944, American aircraft production reached 96,270 units. 16,048 heavy bombers, 35,743 fighters, 22,591 twins, and thousands of trainers and transports. 1 year's output exceeded all German production from 1939 to 1945, about 94,677 planes total. Every B-17 carried 1350 caliber machine guns, each with thousands of rounds. Many Luftwaffe pilots launched with half-loads of ammo. American bombers boasted powered turrets, Norden bomb sights, and advanced navigation. The German opposition often flew with broken radios. In Seattle, Boeing's Plant 2 was turning out 16 B-17s a day. Douglas Aircraft employed 167,000 people across 9 sites. North American Aviation produced 500 P-51 Mustangs a month. Lockheed built a P-38 Lightning every 90 minutes, implementing more than 2,000 combat modifications on the fly. In parallel, General Motors manufactured 57,658 aircraft engines. Packard built 55,523 Rolls-Royce Merlins. Alcoa expanded aluminum output 600%. Dow Chemical's magnesium production leapt from 6 million pounds a year to 333 million. Perhaps the most astonishing change wasn't in metal but in people. In 1941, women made up less than 1% of aircraft workers. By 1943, they accounted for 65%, over 310,000 women riveting, wiring, and inspecting. At Douglas Long Beach, over half the employees were female. The real Rosie the Riveter, Roswell Monroe, drove 3,000 rivets a day at Willow Run with 99.5% accuracy. Women inspectors at Douglas cut defect rates from 3.2 to 0.3%. Ford redesigned tools for smaller hands and accidentally boosted productivity across the plant. Lightweight pneumatic guns reduced fatigue. Adjustable workstations cut injuries. German intelligence reported these developments and dismissed them as hysteria. Surely quality would collapse. Instead, precision soared. The democracy the Nazis mocked was manufacturing air superiority. By mid-1944, the contrast was absolute. Hitler had moved aircraft production into 729 underground bunkers using 60,000 slave laborers, 20,000 of whom died in the process. Sabotage and isolation wrecked the outputs. The entire middlework complex produced fewer engines each month than Ford's single Chicago plant. While Germany dug deeper into the earth, America aimed higher. Boeing's new B-29 was the world's first pressurized bomber. Each cost $65,000 and embodied technology the Reich could barely prototype. By early 1945, America was building 100 B-29s every month. June 6, 1944, Normandy. As Allied forces stormed the beaches, the air above them testified to 4 years of industrial revolution. 11,590 Allied aircraft flew that day against just 319 German sorties, a 3-6-1 superiority. This imbalance wasn't tactical genius. It was arithmetic. Between January and May of that year, American and British bombers dropped 145,000 tons of ordnance on German targets, more than the entire Luftwaffe had dropped on Britain in 5 years. The United States Army Air Forces had outproduced not just Germany, but history itself. By autumn, single Allied raids involved 1,200 bombers and 900 fighters. Each loss that crippled the Luftwaffe was a statistical blip for America. Fighters like the P-51 Mustang ranged as far as Poland, matching German jets in performance and swarming in numbers that rendered comparison meaningless. German pilots called them Indians because they seemed to be everywhere at once. Even Germany's own leaders saw the truth too late. Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels noted angrily in his December 1944 diary, "Göring's promises of Luftwaffe superiority now seem criminal delusion. We fight the world's greatest industrial power with rhetoric." Field Marshal Rommel warned his staff before D-Day, "The Americans can lose 10 tanks for everyone we destroy and still overwhelm us." Even Hitler confessed to Albert Speer in January 1945, "We should have listened to Boetticher's reports. While we built hundreds, they built tens of thousands." Speer himself later testified that Allied bombing slashes had cut German armaments by over a third in every major category. "The American method," he told interrogators, "broke our production system entirely." Germany's Me-262 jet fighter embodied belief in technology as salvation. It was 100 miles per hour faster than any Allied plane and decades ahead in concept. Yet the miracle machine existed only in handfuls, 1,430 built, maybe 200 operational at any time. Engines required overhaul after 10 hours. Alloys for turbines were gone. In a war of tons and hours, quality without quantity became irrelevance. The United States could pursue innovation and mass production simultaneously. While Germany gambled its future on a few fantasy weapons, Lockheed quietly developed the P-80 Shooting Star, a jet superior to any German design and entering production before the Reich fell. No nation had ever won a war by building fewer weapons better. America won by building everything faster. May 8, 1945, Augsburg, Germany. Captured by the U.S. 36th Infantry Division, Hermann Göring still swaggered as he entered the interrogation room, insisting that German technology remained superior. But weeks of questioning by Major Kenneth Heckler eroded the pose. By July, his tone had changed. "I knew your industrial potential was great," Göring said quietly, "but your execution surpassed everything I imagined. That factory at Willow Run alone built more planes than my entire Air Force at its peak. We couldn't supply forces 500 miles from Berlin while you fed armies 5,000 miles from home. It was incomprehensible." At Nuremberg, film of the Willow Run assembly line played as prosecutors listed German cities flattened by its products. Charts showed America building more planes every month in 1944 than Germany in a year. Facing the data, the once swaggering Reichsmarshal fell silent. To prison psychologist Gustav Gilbert, he later confided, "That damned factory broke our backs." When presented the engine totals, 812,000 American aircraft engines versus 241,000 German, he simply stared. From 3,611 planes in 1940 to 295,959 military aircraft by 1945, 97,810 bombers, 99,465 fighters, 98,684 trainers and transports. At the peak, 2 million Americans worked in aviation, a new city of workers every month. The workforce defied the world's prejudices. Women, African Americans, Mexican Americans, Native Americans, disabled veterans, teenagers, the elderly, all volunteers of a democracy in motion. While Germany ruled labor by coercion, America mobilized by cooperation and outperformed slavery in every metric. These untrained hands of 1941 became the planet's most skilled aviation craftsmen by 1945. They didn't just build planes, they reinvented manufacturing. Statistical quality control born in bomber plants became industrial law worldwide. Automation pioneered for B-24S laid the mechanical foundations for spaceflight. The engineers who dreamed of Liberators would one day build Saturn V. Aircraft production cost America $45 billion in 1940s dollars, roughly $800 billion today. The B-29 program alone exceeded the cost of the Manhattan Project. Yet, instead of bankrupting the nation, the arsenal made it rich. Jobs erased the Depression overnight. Personal income doubled in 5 years. Workers financed the war they were fighting, buying war bonds with their own overtime. Willow Run employees alone purchased $45 million worth literally funding their factories' fuel. Germany, meanwhile, poured 40% of its industry into aircraft and still produced less than half of America's output. Slave labor backfired, sabotage grew rampant, quality crumbled, and morale vanished. Productivity per worker dropped after 1943 even as American efficiency tripled. Behind the machines stood organization on a scale without precedent. The War Production Board coordinated 184,000 companies, a web knit by IBM punch-card systems tracking millions of parts. The Radiation Laboratory at MIT employed 4,000 scientists developing radar and navigational systems that let bombers fly and target through cloud and dark. Combat feedback looped from battlefield to factory. Pilots reported weak points, engineers redesigned within days, workers implemented immediately. Boeing added chin turrets to the B-17 6 weeks after the need appeared in Europe. In the Pacific, consolidated modified B-24S for long-range missions without shutting down a single line. Adaptation occurred in weeks. In Germany, it took months or years. That speed of iteration was as decisive as the numbers themselves. Democracy had discovered how to turn information into armament almost in real time. October 15, 1946, Nuremberg prison. Hours before his scheduled execution, Hermann Göring wrote his last letter. The Americans won through industrial power, not military prowess. We were not defeated by better soldiers, but by better factories. The nation we mocked for being soft buried us under aluminum and steel. To his psychologist that night, he added one more sentence. We declared war on an industrial giant while it slept. When it awoke, we were doomed. Historians would call the production miracle the single decisive factor of Allied triumph. Without it, D-Day was unthinkable, strategic bombing unsustainable, the Pacific unwinnable. Dr. Richard Overy summed it simply. The war's outcome was decided not by spirit or tactics, but by weight of material. By 1944, America was producing more military aircraft than all other nations combined. That wasn't superiority. It was domination. Yet its legacy reached beyond victory. It proved that democracies, when threatened, could unite and outcreate dictatorships, that voluntary cooperation could outproduce slave labor, that freedom itself was the greatest engine on earth. From a nation building 3,000 aircraft a year to one rolling out planes every 6 minutes, America became an industrial colossus no power could match. The same assembly lines that riveted B-24S would later assemble housing, highways, and spacecraft. The generation that forged bombers for Europe would forge prosperity at home. Hermann Göring's mocking laughter in May 1940 echoed as history's most expensive joke, a moment when arrogance underestimated liberty. The factory he scoffed at became the factory that broke the Reich. In 4 years, a nation of free workers proved that production lines could be front lines, and that freedom with a wrench in its hand could bury tyranny under 300,000 aircraft. Every B-24 that lifted from Willow Run carried a message riveted into its wings. Never underestimate a democracy with a deadline.